Welcome to r/EntitledParents, where this crazy entitled mum jumps to unbelievable conclusions after she hears her son's girlfriend crying on the phone. Entitled mum jumps to conclusions, thinks girlfriend is pregnant, and has epic meltdown. This is a retro one from the late 90s and the days of prevalent landline telephones. I, a 19-year-old man, was home with my parents over Christmas break from college. My girlfriend, who was 18 at the time, was a freshman, and I was a sophomore. My home was a 3-hour drive from our college. Our school conducted sorority rush for freshman women who chose to participate at the end of Christmas break, so she had gone back a few days early to go through the process. My girlfriend and her friend group all targeted a single sorority where they wanted to land, and decided to pursue that when the time came. It was, to my immature 19-year-old mind, the best sorority. I'd already gone into a fraternity a year earlier when I was a freshman. As was the case in those days, she called every night during the process to tell me how it had gone. I knew she'd definitely call on the 4th night because that is when they found out which sororities gave them bids, and then they had to choose. So she calls the house line and my entitled mum picks up. My entitled mum was unaware that my girlfriend was going through rush. I wasn't trying to hide it, but it's just not something we'd discussed as mother and son for whatever reason. Anyhow, when my entitled mum picks up, my girlfriend is clearly distraught and crying. My mum yells up for me to pick up the landline phone in my room, and I do. My girlfriend did not get into her preferred sorority. She received bids to all of the other good ones. I know this seems stupid, vapid, and privileged as an adult, but to an 18-year-old, this can seem like a terrible event. She was sobbing and looking for comfort. As we're talking, my entitled mum comes rushing into my room, screaming, "She's crying! Did you get her pregnant? Is she pregnant?" My mum then proceeds to kick me and tell me, "You've ruined my reputation and our family's reputation." So I have a sobbing girlfriend on the phone and an entitled mum who is absolutely losing her head, trying to literally kick my butt behind me. I hung up the phone, told my entitled mum to get out and that it was nothing as substantial as an unplanned pregnancy, and to GTFO my room, which she did in embarrassment. I then called my girlfriend back, consoled her, helped her plan which sorority she wanted, and then turned my attention back to my entitled mum. She was supremely embarrassed, but defensive, saying, "I was just concerned about you." I told her not to jump to conclusions in the future, but she was exceptionally defensive of her stupid actions. This was my first lesson that my entitled mum was not meant to be a parent to adult children, and it ultimately led to me going low contact with her a few years later. Yeah, your mum's a bit weird, mate, is what I will say off the bat. I'm not sure how she's reached that strange conclusion just from hearing your girlfriend crying. Like, come on, there are other things to cry about that aren't as serious as this. I don't really understand why her mind just jumped to that, but hey, it did. And clearly she is enough of a problem as a parent. The OP is just like, you know what? Nah, I'm happy to take care of myself now. We'll go no contact. Thanks. I'm kind of done with you. It's just weird. Like, there could have been a million other reasons for your girlfriend to be crying, but no, she's pregnant. Why? I don't understand. Now moving on to our second story. Entitled mum accuses me of trying to poison her baby by purchasing a gallon of store brand milk. The Northeast had a delightful form of winter weather last night into today, resulting in a nice 2-inch thick glaze of ice all over everything. I set out after dinner with the goal of clearing the driveway, and that rapidly proved to be more trouble than it was worth. So I settled for clearing out a path on my car to turn around in because it needed to be plugged in. Doing that much nearly killed me, but I got it done. I figured since I'm moving the car anyway, I may as well run to the convenience store for some essentials before I plug in the car and collapse. On my way down the street, I noticed my new neighbor is out clearing his driveway, and I stopped to ask if they need anything at the store. He says he would very much appreciate me grabbing a gallon of milk for their baby. I ask if there's any special kind he needs. He says no, just a gallon of whole milk. I tell him no problem and proceed on mission. Getting to the store was only dicey in a couple of spots, because 2 inches of ice makes everything more fun. I run in, grab what I need and the gallon of milk, then make the trek back home. I stop in front of my neighbor's house, milk in hand, and see no neighbor. I figure he's around back or something, so I walk up their icy steps and knock on the door. My neighbor's wife answers the door, and I hand her the gallon of milk. She looks very puzzled and says, "Thank you." I say no problem and start the stagger back down the steps. Not even halfway down the 4 steps to their front door, and I hear, "Are you kidding me? Are you trying to poison my baby?" I experienced a curious blend of puzzlement and alarm, and I turn around to look back at the woman, who is now thrusting the milk back out at me with a furious expression on her face. I only see milk, no poison. She then clarifies that the milk isn't organic and likely contains all these horrible pesticides and growth hormones, and I need to take it back right now. I just say, "Oh, my bad." Grab the milk from the woman and get back into my car and finish the drive home. If it entailed more effort or cost me more than $3, I probably would have gotten angry about it. But it's not worth getting mad over people's BS, so I mostly shrugged it off. I just divested myself of all the snow gear, took a shower, and demolished a bowl of cereal in front of the TV. Right around when I was comparing the merits of not moving versus getting up to refill my bowl, my people proximity detectors went off and started balking like crazy. In between balks, I could hear a rather timid series of door knocks. Well, that solves the debate, and I managed to get between my dogs and the door and opened it to see a sheepish looking lady neighbor, literal hat in hand. Her husband is standing on my walkway with a baby in his arms and a ferocious thundercloud riding his brow. She starts to explain that she thought I was a grocery delivery service. She didn't recognize me in the hat with the red face, and she's very sorry, and they very much need the milk, and here's $5 for my trouble. I tell her she can keep her money and she's welcome to the milk, but I had a little bit of it to go with my cereal. I'll go and grab it right now. I shut the door in the interests of my fuzzy alarms not bowling through the door to greet their new best friends, deposit the bowl in the sink, and grab the gallon of milk. On the way back up the stairs, the bad idea fairy wraps me firmly on the head with his wand, and I pause to grab a Sharpie. I cross out the milk portion of the 100% milk label and write poison underneath. I then open the door and hand over the now correctly labeled container to the wife and wish them a safe trip home. She sees my corrected label and turns beet red. Then she turns and walks down the stairs, and I can see the husband read the label, connect some mental dots, and then start laughing before the door shuts and I go back to whimpering in front of my TV. It'll be interesting to see how they are moving forward. The problem that I've got with this story and with this woman is that the lady validated what she was saying and how she was saying it because she thought you were a grocery store worker or delivery driver. That doesn't make it okay to speak to someone like that. In fact, if anything, it makes it worse. Like, you're just looking down on people because they're a delivery driver and you feel the need or you feel allowed to speak to them like that. Nah, that's not on. You shouldn't talk to someone in a certain way just because you believe they're of a higher status or your neighbor, whatever. Like, it's just ridiculous. I'm sorry, but it takes a sort of person to say, "Oh no, it's their job. You can deal with the abuse." Like, you don't need to be abusive to somebody just because it's their job. It's a very, very strange mentality. Almost a weird mentality, I would say. That's enough of that. Let's move on. And now for our final post. Hit a bike, lose your house. Many years ago, in a land a few blocks away, I loved to ride my bicycle. Single mother, no car. It was nothing really special, but it got me all over town. I mostly kept on sidewalks because traffic can be filled with too many entitled drivers. I got to a corner and saw a car coming up the side street to the stop sign. The driver slowed way down, so I assumed he would stop where he was supposed to. He didn't. My bad, because I'd already started to ride my bike off the curb into the street in front of him. You guessed it, crunch. I squirmed my way from under the rest of my bike and the car and started checking myself for injuries. Just a bruised knee, so I was very lucky. The driver got out of the car and yelled at me for being in his way. He didn't ask if I was okay, and I yelled at him for running a stop sign. A passerby checked on me and called the police. While I was safely back on the sidewalk with the passerby, the driver pulled his car about 5 or 6 feet forward, dragging my bike. I think he knew he was in trouble, so he altered the accident site to look like he was already around the corner, because when the police came, that's what he told them. He said he stopped, proceeded around the corner, and I just barreled out into his path. The police officer asked for my story, and I asked him to ask the driver to back his car up a bit, and I'd show the officer exactly where we both were at the time of the accidents. He was wondering how I could be so positive. But then, once the driver moved his car, I pointed to the scrapes in the street that my bike had made when I was hit. The driver got a ticket, and I got his information. I wrote several letters to him, asking him to replace my bike, but he ignored them. I finally had to take him to small claims court to be compensated for my squished bike. He didn't show up. The judge reviewed all my evidence and awarded me the cost of a new bike, plus pain and suffering for my bruised knee. The court served him those papers, but he ignored them too. Now I'm frustrated. No money, no bike. And now the real entitlement begins. I found another secondhand bike and started riding around again. I decide to pedal by the driver's house just because I'm curious, and there's a for sale sign on his lawn. So he's trying to move and make a getaway just to avoid paying me. I went home, gathered all my paperwork regarding the judgment, and head to the courthouse. There, I filed a lien against his house for the judgment amount. Then I called his realtor and informed her of the judgment and lien. She called the driver. Now, 6 months or so after the accident, I finally hear from the driver. He called and threatened me over the phone, telling me he had witnesses who could prove I was wrong about how the accident happened. I informed him that the time to have brought those witnesses was at the court dates, which he missed. He told me that I'd better take the lien off the house. I refused. He tried to tell me he could sell it, then he would pay me. I told him that's not the way it works. Pay me and I take the lien off. He growled something and hung up on me. 2 months later, I get a call from the realtor who wants to stop by and drop off a check. I sign the lien release and get a cashier's check, and my kids had a great Christmas. Wow, that is very embarrassing from this man. Look, obviously he doesn't want to get in trouble, and I understand that, but you have to be accountable for your actions, and trying to fake an accident where it happened anyway, and then trying to sell your house just so you can move and not pay a little bit of money as a fine. It was only a ticket, right? It wasn't criminal. It wasn't, going to prison or being arrested. Just a little small fine. Is that really worth selling your house for so you don't have to get proved wrong and missing court dates, etc., etc.? Very embarrassing. Grow some cojones, my friend. It's not that deep. And you almost caused a serious accident. Hold yourself accountable. Hey, I would say this guy is probably the sort of person that you do not want to run into, given that he doesn't have a problem with running into other people. What a shambles of a man. Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for this episode of r/EntitledParents. Really hope you enjoyed it. If you did and you want more from me right away from this subreddit, check out this video on screen. If you are new to the channel and you haven't already done so, consider hitting this button. Subscribe for daily Reddit content, and I'll see you guys all tomorrow for a brand new episode.